I would like to welcome, for the first time, a guest my goal for this talk is to stay out of the way because Mike grew up in Ottumwa, Iowa. He has a fondness, an incredible affection for his alma mater, high school. Natalie, when did you start working there?
The fall of 1998,
So fall of 98, and you worked there until,
May of 2018.
so 20
20
full
years.
years.
Yes, 20 full years.
Okay. So the whole goal that we in our last conversation was all about traditions, and we talked about how the fact that there was a class song and the things that might things that
Class
I
yell.
feel what
Cheer.
That's yell.
Class cheer,
class
not a
cheer.
song. Mhm.
Okay. Again, it's a code thing for me. Rosemary Meyer yelling at me for why don't you know your class song and why don't you and I'm like, I'm sorry, Miss Meyer, I just don't know because we don't do them anymore. But that really broke her heart. So the point of this is for Mike and Natalie to have a conversation. It's my goal to be out. Over to you, Natalie. You get to lead Mike.
Well, the first thing I said, posted in the chat after I watched your video from the last one was that Atumwa still sings that alma mater song or whatever the Atumwa school
The-
song.
oh, is that still the school song?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, sis boom ba rah 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 Johnny Ketchup whatever rah,
Fine.
in all the 20 years I struggled to learn that thing. And
Shame on you.
I know it's bad. And but they still had the class cheer. Like
Oh,
every
really?
class still had a class cheer.
Is there a time they do it? Because when I was there, whenever we would have, a whole school meeting, the principal talking about something, which happened occasionally, never really to yell at us, but something where they were doing some kind of school meeting or an assembly. And of course, nobody does assemblies anymore.
Mhm.
Is there still a time, do they bring the whole school together and do they still count up to 20 and do the whole thing that I talked about?
Right. So the counting thing must have went by the wayside. That was not happening in the end of the, 1990s, but they still did in the assemblies at the end, they still did the class cheer, more at pep rallies. And when I
Okay.
was there, because that gymnasium was so small, they have now hence just built a nice brand new facility. They had to do those pep rallies in the auditorium.
And that's where we did everything that I talked about.
Okay. So yeah, and then yeah, they still did the class cheer at that point in time. So what has happened maybe in the last 10 years? I don't know how things have changed, but they were still doing it when I left.
Okay. So that hadn't changed. Another
Yeah.
thing to think about when I was there, um, of course, the gym was behind the auditorium. Steve, you have to look at well, you've been in that building, Steve, so you know it was that L shape. The auditorium went off at a 45-degree angle from the front, at the 90-degree angle of the classroom wings, and then the auditorium went back, and the gym was behind that.
Mhm.
But when I was there, we still used the gym.
Right.
I visited for a class reunion and for you, and they had taken that whole back hallway, and that became storage for the theater. We had none of that. Um,
Mhm.
I guess we stored some stuff up over above the entrance on the stage right side. There was kind of a loft up there that flats were put in, and a little bit of storage that we had. Um, and that little makeup room on the stage left side, I don't know if that's still there, or would they blow all that out?
Yeah, so one of the things was needing wing space. And so when they did the remodel back in 2002, when it was finished then, that whole room went by the wayside, so we had room to put other things.
And we had in a, which we, I don't think ever used, a hemp house. Uh, Not something with smoke, Steve, but a hemp house is a fly system using rope, just
Mhm.
traditional hemp rope and a pin rail. And that was, of course, on the stage side of that makeup room that was at the stage left side of the theater. So they probably had to take all that rigging out, move that pin rail. Did they have anything for flying or?
No, because wow. So above the theater was classrooms. then when they did a remodel, they built above the what would be your traditional fly space. There were science classrooms above there, so there was never a chance that there will never be a fly system, a full fly system, unless they somehow demolished and built up.
See, and like I said, we didn't do anything that I remember, so I don't even know if there was how high that went. If they took that out and laid a floor in up there, or if
Um,
it just wasn't high enough and they just built. I just don't know.
Yeah,
It doesn't
I don't
matter.
think it wasn't high enough for that completely. I mean, we still flew the electrics for the lights in, but there was never space to fly anything out and above.
Yeah.
So I was there because of the classrooms were above. You could hear them scraping their chairs at the end of the day as they were,
Mhm.
finishing up.
Sure.
So, but the theater itself was in the center, the whole center of the building, like right there. I mean.
Yeah.
I had to have a key to second, third, and fourth floor just to access everything.
Yeah. Well, it was quite a building, and I know that there. See, we talked about that Alpine slope, the stadium seating there at the back. Is that still there? Because under that was where we stored props. Was under that. I think they made that into a teacher's
It
lounge
did. It became a
eventually.
teacher's lounge while I was there. And then that whole opening was covered over with seats. So those
Oh,
old,
the vom.
yeah, is gone. Is gone. And underneath, yeah, it was part of a teacher's lounge then. So that whole under, like above where the teacher's lounge is at, it was slanted, and you knew that above it are the seats of the auditorium. So
Mm.
that's still there. Um, yeah, that was probably the biggest thing. But I think that just recently they were doing another renovation in there finally. So after another, 20 some years.
It's good that they do that because when I was at Cedar Rapids, that building I don't know was built in what 59, and it wasn't until a few years ago, after Bob Geider passed away, that I was in there. They'd replaced the auditorium seats. They were old plywood back seats with, a cushion that you would sit on that had been there since that building had been built. So it's nice that they're doing something fairly, 20 years fairly often in
Yeah.
the building.
It was
Yeah.
I always felt too, and people said there were like ghosts in that auditorium. I swear that place was haunted though. I still swear
Oh,
there were times that, weird things would happen, and it's just the ghost of the auditorium.
we didn't experience that. At least in
Yeah,
my tenure there, we did not have that. Yeah.
yeah.
Question,
Sorry,
Steve?
I have to interrupt. I have to interrupt. As the non-theater geek in this group, I know that you literally leave a ghost light on to keep anybody from falling into the orchestra pit. That was the reason that I knew of in Benton Community. Is that the origin story of ghost light? Like I'm just curious. Like, can you help me out as a non-theater geek?
Well, I don't know where the term comes from. Do you, Natalie? You might
I think
suggest.
there was more something about keeping the ghosts of the past actors in there happy so that, to welcome everybody in. There's something along that lines that I don't know. I struggled because by the time I moved to Ottumwa, the custodial stuff would always shut that light off when I put the ghost light in. And so I had to like, hey, there's a safety reason that it's there. And I think it's sort of, I mean, some theaters still do it, but I think it's not everywhere. I'm just saying it's not totally gone by the wayside. We talk about it and I try to have one, but it just doesn't happen.
Well, I subbed and worked some theater stuff, supported the theater department here at West Delaware. They had a ghost light, which was nice, except it was always at the back of the stage.
Mm,
They would fly all the curtains out.
right.
Of course, they had choir in there every day, so there were always bleacher risers in there because that was then became, the choir classroom. And the ghost light would be, off right, kind of in the up
Oh,
right corner there near the back wall. And it's like, no, it needs to be down
yeah.
center because it's to show you where the pit is, so you don't walk off there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, but we didn't do a ghost light when I was there. That was not part of our tradition.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
checked. I use Gemini, and according to Gemini, it's everything you guys are just saying. That it's part superstitious, part safety, and so that's the reason for a ghost light. So anyhow, keep going.
I think they still do it in the professional theater.
Hmm. I think so. I see
Yeah,
them. I see people with pictures and the ghost light is there.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, traditions. Everyone has different traditions. That's what I've learned too. And you were mentioning, you didn't remember stuff, becoming a thespian, Steve, about the performance stuff and everything. And I said, I actually carried that tradition to all of the three thespian troupes that I have worked with over the years, where when my new inductees go into the troupe, we have the full ceremony and they write and create their own short skit as the entertainment for the night. And they use it as a sign of pride. They show that this is them getting into an honor society, and they write it themselves, put it together. And some of the most creative performances have come out of those evenings each year.
And to be clear, the reason that I don't remember is that I have since our conversation, um, I was inducted the year after Mike left, and it was nothing against the person who replaced Mike. It was that I was busy enough with working at Montgomery Wards, trying to earn money, whatever. I knew college was what I needed to save money for, and so I had earned enough points that I made it, but I also had checked out of theater. I'm like, I can do speech and I can do Montgomery Wards, and I don't have time for theater. And so yeah, so that's why I don't remember getting inducted to the thespian thing because I had checked out of theater at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
And that happens to some kids.
Yeah, yeah,
Life balance,
yeah.
you know.
Well,
And speaking of that, if I would do anything, if I, won the lottery and would fund a scholarship, and I know there's a scholarship that the national organization awards in my name after I retired, the board created one, and it's for leadership. But I would, if I would do any one scholarship, I would award it to a student who specifically intends not to go into theater. That it is for a kid, that's those kids that sell their soul to a theater department, to high school. They're there, they do everything, they build sets, they do all of that. They have no intention to go into theater, but that's where they find validation and meaning and involvement and family. And you train many more audience members,
of
many more, infinitely more audience members than actors, unless you're in a very special program.
of our era,
Those are the kids that need to get a scholarship because they've done so much for the program and don't get any recognition.
Mhm.
Natalie, correct me if I'm wrong, we would call that the Matt Shalhoub Scholarship.
Probably. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Because I mean,
Definitely.
everything Mike just described,
Yeah.
that was Matt Shalhoub. And so,
Yeah, he did all of that. But
um,
Yeah.
I look at all of the stuff that I do because yeah, the number of students that truly go into something theater related is a small percentage. But as I tell my students, I said, I'm not just training students to be theater performers or work in the theater. I said, I'm training you to be leaders. Like that's literally what I feel that my theater program has done is create students to be strong leaders. Y'all know they learn how to work under pressure. You learn how to work with all of these other people's personalities. There are so many things that they learn people related that makes them successful in what they do once they leave high school.
And if I would do anything to back up and change, I would add that element. I don't know that I did that. I never talked about that when I was teaching.
Mm,
Maybe I don't know if I did that by example, just by immersion that it just developed. Um, but I think that's a terrific lesson to put into that you do that. I think you train audience members, you train
mhm,
you train theater goers, you train critical theater goers in the best sense of the word, theater appreciation because they do that. And that's why I do appreciate schools that do meaningful theater work, meaningful plays. You can do the canon, but the canon's getting pretty old now and may or may not stand up anymore. But there are plays worth doing, and then there are other things that are just fluff that I guess are fun. But for me,
mhm,
I don't think that's the meat of what you do in theater. I think the meat of what you do are good pieces of theatrical literature, be they out of the canon, out of the 40s, out of the 50s, or even out of the 90s and the 2000s. There's still good theater being written, like we talked about Almost Maine. Really nice little piece of theater and a
mhm,
great show for a lot of kids. But a lot of times people choose shows that have got immense casts because they're written for that. And I guess that's good. I like to see something that's got some meat to it in terms of plot, theme, substance.
mhm. I always have a meaning or a purpose when I select a show. And I think one of my favorite parts is the process that we go to get to the end. We talk a lot about process in my program and what do we learn from it? And, even even as we went back and we did Matilda as our musical this winter. And of course, what do I always go do? The first thing I did is went back and read the book, and went back to the actual literature. But we talked a lot about that. I mean, Matilda is truly a show about bullying.
Mm.
And we talked a lot about that, bullying as a teacher, bullying as a parent, and a lot of things that go to the depth of a show and what is our true purpose of the message for each of these characters. But I don't know. I think part of it too, and probably to attest this, because I remember even those, few years we worked with Pites, but I feel that it's my guidance that helps them through to that process. It's what we do as the teacher to make them appreciate it and want to do a good job at it, because I have high expectations for my students, like very high, and they know that. And they're always trying to achieve and meet those. And we talk a lot about what could we have done better. We don't, we always say, even, I don't want to say it's bad theater. We always say every piece of theater has something we can learn from it, even if it's talking it from the theater perspective, saying, if they would have just done this with their lighting, this would have been a really great scene. Maybe if they developed this a little stronger, or we don't think they understood what they were talking about. But we always look at it from the positive perspective of what could we do to make this stronger, even in our own performances.
And while we didn't do a lot of post-show evaluation, I certainly believe, okay, Steve, you say, I do what I do very well, that I held high expectations for the performance, that I wanted my kids not to be that high school show, but to be the most we could be beyond that. And I will never accept, I think Steve, you and I have had this conversation. I will never accept that parent that says, "Oh, it was just wonderful. They were as good as on Broadway." They will never be as good as on Broadway. They'll never be as good as any professional regional theater, and maybe even some community theater. Cedar Rapids Community Theater does amazing work. Matt Hagmeyer, we know Matt does amazing work with that, and I've seen some other shows there that are amazing. I also saw that thing recently that was not well done at a community theater kind of setting. But I always wanted my kids to be the best they could be. So how many times you would appreciate this? My famous phrase is, right? One more time. One more time. Okay, one more time. We're going to try this now one more time. And that always was intended to say, no, this can be better. It can be better. And that's what our goal is, to make it the best that we can make it. Yes,
I,
Steve?
I want to chime back in with a question because again, I'm trying to understand the difference between theater and TV and movies. Okay. So in the world of theater, you have an amazing requirement of sticking to the words of whatever script you are using. That's not true. That's definitely not true in movies, and depends on the TV show, not true for a different TV show. In the world of theater, correct me if I'm wrong, like I remember for Grease that we did with you, Mike, there's a reference to condoms that you just had to just X out and make there was some joke about balloons that you wrote in. But like it was a big deal for you to actually take some words out and make it about balloons instead of condoms. Um, so my question for both of you is, am I right about the perception that theater is really you have a how you interpret what you do is one thing, but the words have to remain to the author of the script. Is that correct or not?
That's your legal requirement.
Mhm.
And that's the artistic requirement too. But you will see shows where kids just can't memorize lines, or they will just start creating. And I don't know about you, Natalie, but I know there are times when it's like, I am tired of fighting the battle. It's going to be what it is. But I know at UIL, when you go into your competition, you have somebody who follows along in the script to make sure they are true to the script. And at the UIL is the University Interscholastic League, which is a Texas competition in anything you can compete in, from spelling to journalism to plays to football and anything in between.
Yes.
Um, in the one night competition, they have somebody who follows along in the script, right? I don't know. I don't know what the rules are. Can you deviate, or if you miss
So
a word, is there a problem? What's the rule?
Right. So I have to send a copy of my script with all changes, cuts, and edits ahead of time, and they have that in front of them when we do the show. You also have an integrity script that shows what, in case you've had other things marked, that has to be in your contest manager's hand before you start your rehearsal, which I have tomorrow for my next level of contest. Now, if my kids deviate, I think that the key is having your show strong enough that if they somehow end up deviating, that you don't notice it. Do they so much necessarily follow word for word? I don't know if the contest manager does or not, but I think the judges have it there for reference. Watched some of them before, the adjudicators, where they might flip to double check, but most of them read that show right before we go to contest with your cuts and all of your notations in it.
And for your information, Steve, copyright says you can't cut a script
Correct.
without the permission
Permission.
of the publishing house, the
Correct.
licensing house. And the
Yes.
licensing house, of course, only can do what the playwright will allow them to do. For years, you could not cut anything by Neil Simon. He would not allow the publishing house to allow his scripts to be cut or change, can't cut language, you can't change language. So if we did something, I don't, I, you know, I, it, that was, you talk about Grease, that was Dave Hathaway's line. And
Yeah, it
he
was.
said
I
something about
actually,
finding something.
I remember that.
And
I remember it was Dave Hathaway's line, and also, sorry, when you said Herbert Simon, Tom Dimmer and Michelle Lamming and I did a short play, a one of his plays, and I'm sorry, Tom, if you see this, we probably would have made it all state except Tom came in at the wrong time. That just threw Michelle and I off, and we just didn't recover.
that happens. That happens. But I think the line was because I can remember that he says something, and it seems to be Ralph Wright who played.
It was Ralph.
Begging.
It was Dave and Ralph doing a conversation back and forth. We
And,
did that
and
for
and
so much
Ralph's line
time.
was, "No, they're used balloons," which I honestly don't know if that was. I remember the line. I don't remember if that was probably an illegal cut or change that we made, or if that was the line. No, they're used balloon. I think that's the line.
I'm trying to remember because I did that show back in Ottumwa actually. Because the only thing we had, I mean, if you wanted to change, the grease writers are probably the most particular of some of them that I know. They don't allow you to cut anything in there. There's like one section where it says you can change this for this, in there, and that's it. But I think, I swear they use balloon line. That is actually in the script.
It's
No,
no,
it
they're used.
wasn't. It wasn't. Yeah,
You sure?
no,
Really?
I'm sure because I literally remember this. I literally remember this
And
because
the vote's
it
two
had
to
to be
one,
cut.
Natalie.
I'm gonna go look. I'm gonna go onto my shelf tomorrow and I'm gonna like
Well,
go. I can't, I won't be
it
at
can be it can
school.
be a comment down below or on the whatever. But I do remember that was
It's
a big
it's
deal at the time.
it's Danny's line in
Mm.
that scene, I'm sure. Yeah,
But
yeah.
in what I do, by the time you get to where you are someone who's evaluating for our level, and even, I judged a lot when we were in Iowa for stuff too, that you start knowing scripts and you know if it's something that's changed, and you also know who allows you to cut and not cut. So you get to that level where you know those things.
And Texas is very particular about that, and they only do they have a list of approved shows. Uh, you can only do a show that's on the list. That list is cleared with the licensing houses, so you know that it can be cut. And Texas teachers are masters at cutting good theater
Yes.
to what,
Yeah.
45 minutes, 40 minutes, how long?
40 minutes.
40 minutes. They will cut. I've seen some great shows because I've been down there a number of times as a visitor, seeing really strong scripts that stand up very well as a 40-minute cutting.
Yeah. And the difference, so you talk about that difference, I was in Iowa for all those years. I directed in Iowa for 25 years before I moved here to Texas. And for the last 4 to 5 years, my one act play was in at the all-state level. I came here to Texas, took over a new team, and oh, we're down here at the bottom. And I
Yeah,
realized things are different, so I need to up my game. And so I feel that I've become a stronger director based on the work I've done down here. And our school has gotten recognition. People know that my school does good theater right now. So,
I would believe
you
that.
know,
And that's where competition can be a good thing because it does
mhm.
ask you to raise your game.
Yes.
And that's another thing I will say, working with actors, and I will say in adjudicating, you've got to raise the stakes.
Mhm.
It is ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. That's the essence of drama. Ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. You've got to make this extraordinary. You're playing it it's not important enough. How important is this? Raise the stakes. I'll say, do you understand poker? Do you know what it means to raise the stakes? You've got to raise the stakes in the scene. That's why we're like working at district contests in Iowa, because you get to talk with the people. And so I cram my 3 or 4 minutes very fast. I hope the director's there listening and probably hopefully nodding and saying, yes, I've told them the same thing. I don't, I'm probably trying to redirect. No, I'm trying to make it better, stronger than listen, because the kid, I'm sure, is not going to remember all of that I try to say in that short time. And sometimes I'll look at the director and say, are you understanding what I'm saying about this? And that is it honest? Is it in the moment? Is it important enough? Are you finding variety? Are you finding change? Where's the discovery? Sometimes I'll ask, where's the high point? Do you understand the arc of this? Do you understand how it fits in the show? Too often people do stuff, they just do it because it's a nice song for musical theater. You know what's
I
happening
think
here?
where I think that sometimes is the difference where, moving to Texas, we have a fine arts requirement to graduate. So it could be theater, art, dance, music, orchestra, band, whatever, where, in Iowa, a majority of our schools, like theater was the first thing that was cut when they started cutting budgets, right? And so, we didn't have theater. I mean, I think about where I would be had we actually had theater classes when we were back at Benton, how different it would have been because you work that much harder as a director when your kids aren't in your class. Where now I'm working with kids that I may have had 4 years in a row working in theater. So we know how each other operates and I know what they need to work on and they work to fix that and become better. So, but I don't know. I think theater, I look at no matter what any of us have done, if we've done theater, you've become good communicators. You know how to work with people. And to me, I teach a lot of that in my classroom talking about here's what theater teaches you. It's not just about doing the play, but it's what you learn from doing the play and how you get to the end point of the play.
Yeah.
And I also tell them all the time how my friends from high school that I'm the closest with are the friends that I did theater with. They will be with you for life. They will.
Well,
I
I'll just take credit, Natalie, for everything you said. It's because you had a good high school theater director.
did. I
Or
did.
maybe not.
Well,
Maybe
and
maybe
I'm
you
and I
build
want to
on it.
take
Maybe
I
I
want to
just
take
laid a
credit.
foundation and you built on that.
Did. We've
I
worked
want to
together
take credit for the
for
fact I want to take credit for the fact that Benton didn't have theater classes because then I probably wouldn't have got to know Mike so well in terms of speech. So I was never going to be the theater geek. That was never in my cards. And so I'm kind of glad Benton didn't have that because I wouldn't have gained from his expertise in speech. So um
And funny you should mention speech because honestly, as much as I love working theater, I love the individual work in speech.
me
That I
too.
really like that, and I really like judging some of that because I like that one-on-one time to communicate and help a kid grow. I really did like the speech coaching work. Of course, while I did theater, the 25 years that I taught, I did theater at all the schools at LaPorte City, at Benton, at NUHS, at the lab school, at the university, and at Cedar Rapids. I did theater at all of those. I only did speech though at Benton, and then I got out of the speech because somebody else was doing it at NUHS. Somebody else had that, and at Cedar Rapids Jefferson, Kathy Novi did it. Was a great director, speech coach. So I didn't do that, but I always loved the individual work with speech. And taking kids from wherever they started to wherever we could get to.
Mhm.
Not everybody got to be
Mm-mm.
top all-state Division One, but I hope everybody felt that they learned something and got better.
Agreed. And that's why I like students that need a lot of work to grow more. I will put them in those individual categories for when we do thespian festival. So it might be you're doing monologue because you need to work on, figuring out how to do things on your own. And then it's a matter of as long as you go from here to here and have made progress, then it's a win, right? The goal is did you advance and become better than where you started? But yeah, I agree. I always liked the individual work for speech also.
What did I write to you when Natalie? Remember you quoted that letter. Do you still have that letter?
Did. Somewhere, yeah.
Or
I
do
read
you remember?
the
I
letter.
remember the essence of it. Do you remember the essence of it?
Yeah, I remember. So you gave us a letter when we made All State that year for Sports for Speakers our sophomore year. And, I'd have to go back and remember some of that now. But, I had that.
I
I
was on
have
the
it somewhere.
team, just letting it be known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we worked really hard for that. And I also, for me, for some reason, that letter was important, right? And so all through and still now, after every show I direct, all my students get a letter from me. They're not
Mm.
handwritten anymore, but I let them know where they were at in that process and what was important and what they've learned. And they keep them all. And they will tell me years later, I've heard people, I still have my letter from you. They
Yeah.
keep them in their scrapbook, just like I did with that one. And, gosh, yeah, there
And
was,
that's something I intended to do had I continued on, but jobs changed and that went away. But
yeah.
the essence of it was the award you get, the medal, the letter, the Division One certificate, that's going to become something that's in a box somewhere and will mean nothing. It's what you've learned and the skills you've acquired and that you practice that that are important.
Mhm.
It's not the piece of paper, it's the skills. And remember, Steve, that quote I said with you, I think on our first thing, what you do is your history. What you set in motion is your legacy. That piece of paper is history. How you changed as an individual, as a communicator, that's my legacy.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm actually because we're literally we're at wrap up time here. So I just want to
Good.
say that of the performance that Natalie and I are talking about, all three of us are talking right now. This touchdown performance thing, the sports thing we did, choral reading. Um,
Yes.
to be clear, we did three different choral readings within one, and we came this close to getting the banner at the woman who was judging us for the banner literally said we were their second choice. So we came that close. But the shout out that I want to give right now is to Mike's wife because hands down the most fun of the three was a thing that she wrote. Jack LaLanne's a healthy guy. Exercise could make me anyhow. Hands down, the funnest thing. Like and so came from Linda. And so I just so we cannot end this without giving a shout out to Linda for that contribution. Um, so wrap up thoughts, and then we end this. Yeah.
I think it's funny that, what you remember is that we came close to getting the banner that year. And to me, I guess that wasn't the important part of it, which, a lot of people, that's their end result, right? Is they
I'm
call the
competitive.
prize. I know. And so that would be your style as a director. And and so me, we look at it's a matter, did we do our best? Who else was there? Did we do our best? And what did you come away from it? What did you learn? What would you do better if you did it again? And so I don't know. I'm a very positive person. So that's kind of how I teach most of the time as well. But things change over time. Traditions that are started in one school at some point, when does that change and go away? I don't know. And theater is something that, what do I want to say? Theater is something, as we all have aspects of it. What do we remember? What do we carry through? And what makes us stronger leaders?
And if we're wrapping up on that sense of theater, because I was kind of a director who was very product oriented. Certainly process. We went through a lot of process to get there, but my goal was product. And while I wish I had done more of that evaluative thing, that post, what have we learned from this? I hope my leadership through that said to kids, we've got to make this better. We've got to make the best we can. And I asked a number of former students some time ago because I was doing a presentation. I said, was your time in theater worth doing? Mike Hankin and Tom Dimmer and Todd Dimmer and a number of people, John Jensen, and they all responded, yes, it was worth doing. And Todd said, he said, one thing you taught me was attention to detail, that I don't go, and he must be doing something where he does presentations. He said, I don't go into every one where I don't know my room. I don't know who's supporting me in that room. Like maybe it's in a hotel, the support staff there. I make sure that every detail that I'm going to be going into is the way I want it. So there are no surprises, so that I've got this the way I want it to be. And I think that's how I train my kids to be always is no, what are you doing? Why are you doing it that way? What makes this work? Now, how do we make sure that you are communicating that to get that best message across? That was my goal with it.
And it transfers to every job. That's the thing. The things we do in theater transfer to every job.
Uh, Three quotes I used to end with. We know what we are, we know not what we may be. Okay?
What's in my
That's
play right now?
That it's in your that's out of Hamlet,
I
right?
know it is.
Uh,
Ophelia.
Second one, building on that, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Henry Ford. And the third one is the thespian model. Once you create it, act well your part. There all the honor lies. I think those three absolutely link together. And
Yeah.
I will leave you with that as a message.
Okay, this is over because we're less than 1 minute. We're gonna die no matter what. Number one, number two, Todd Dimmer's best friend is my pledge son. So I just think that's a hilarious thing. Todd, Todd Dimmer's best friend is my pledge son. That makes it all full circle. It's been wonderful talking to both of you. I'll send you another link, whatever. Bye.
Till
Bye.
next time. Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, talk to you later.